I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry Town Council to order at 6:36 p.m. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua is absent this evening. Councilmember Ludwig. Here. Councilmember Shockley. Here. Vice President LeBlanc.
Here.
President Lima.
Here. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the event of an emergency, members of the public can exit out either doors 1 or 2 in the back of council chambers to the back parking lot or front lawn of Town Hall. At this time, I'll seek a motion to take the October 10th, 2023 executive session minutes and October 24th, 2023 open session minutes as a block.
We'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Do I hear a motion to approve the executive session minutes of October 10th, 2023 and open session minutes of October 24th, 2023?
I'll make the motion.
Motion
I'll
by
second it.
Vice President LeBlanc, second by Councilmember Shockley. Madam Clerk, did you receive any edits?
I did not.
Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
At this time, we'll hear a public comment on docketed items only. Are there any members of the public who'd like to make a public comment on any docketed items this evening? Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Any members of the public on Zoom, public comment on docketed items only? Raise your hand to be let in and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Hi, this is Cheryl from Reed Schoolhouse Road.
Could you please just state your name and full name and address for the record, please?
Cheryl Kane, 185 Reed Schoolhouse Road.
Welcome. Go right ahead.
Yes, I'm concerned about, you're talking tonight about the zoning and subdivisions, and you're going to be voting on that to approve.
Tonight, I believe is just the first reading, if I'm not correct.
Okay, I just have
Oh, no,
questions.
it is. I'm sorry, it is a vote tonight, but we do actually have public hearing on that specifically. If you want to stay, that's the next item on the agenda, and you can speak and ask questions with the planning director during that public hearing.
And when's that going to happen?
Right after this public comment finishes.
Okay, that'll be fine.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other members of the public on Zoom, public comment on docketed items only? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment on docketed items is now closed. At this time, I'll seek a motion to open public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
We have one matter for public hearing this evening. Item A, Ordinance 2023-4, public hearing of proposed amendments to Town Code Chapter 255 of the Code of Ordinance of the Town of Coventry entitled Zoning. This is on pages 22 to 62 in our packets. I'll turn it over to Planning Director Doug McLean at this time.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone tonight. My name is Doug McLean. I'm the Town Planning Director. I will give a bit of background on sort of where we are in the process and how we got here. I think that's valuable because this is a public hearing. There could be interested members that are just coming into this process fresh. I don't wish to go into a lot of great detail. I know the council is familiar with this matter from previous updates, as well as the workshop that we had on this. So I'll I'll try to give a broad overview, and then I'll try to be brief as we go through the actual ordinance document, just to highlight some of the changes that we had discussed at that last workshop. So to begin, all of the changes that are being proposed through this ordinance number 2023-4, are in direct response to new state law mandates that are sweeping in nature. They're being dealt with throughout the entire state. Every municipality is basically addressing these same state law mandates. As a whole, we have adopted a conservative defensive posture to address them. The mandates require changes to the zoning ordinance, which is in front of you tonight. They require changes to the subdivision regulations, which is ultimately a vote of the Planning Commission. It will require changes to our application checklists and forms, but everything really flows downhill from zoning. All of the changes that are being made in zoning set the stage for what is occurring through some of the other regulatory and administrative documents that are happening after. We have been working on this for quite a while. We've been working with the aid of a consultant who is present tonight. Ashley Sweet is here if any questions arise. We've been working in close consultation with our legal counsel. All of these documents certainly carry with them a certain degree of policy decisions that are being made, in large part to take a defensive posture, and thought on how we will be able to successfully implement this new code that's being brought forward, and the administrative procedures to best position this community. So I think that gives enough of a high level background. I guess in terms of the actual meeting steps that have brought us here, we've had a few meetings prior to this. This was, read at the council's meeting in late September. That introduced the ordinance. We then began a notice process. So this has been properly noticed. The hearing tonight has been advertised and noticed. We did, as we developed this document, which is certainly complex, and as we discussed at our workshop, there's a lot of nuances. It can be hard to digest this code. We have identified changes that were needed after the code was initially read. And at a staff level, we have identified a series of suggested edits, and those edits can really only be made through consideration through the hearing process. So the initial document is certainly a source document that is being considered tonight, but any changes to that document are considered tonight, and they really should be to some degree aired out. And that's my goal when I go through the document, is to air out the suggested changes by staff. Everything you're gonna see in this document is what you heard at our November 6th joint workshop. So while we were working through this document, making changes to both the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance at the same time, trying to work quickly to address this state law deadline, which essentially all of this code at the state level and our local level needs to be ready for a January 1 implementation date. So January 1 of 2024. And while we were doing this, we did identify a need to really pull the town council, the planning commission, and the zoning board of review into a couple of joint workshop format sessions to make sure all the primary decision makers for land use in the community were aware of what was happening, and that all the changes that you're going to see on the screen tonight were what we vetted at our November 6th joint workshop. So with that being said, I'll just introduce a couple of different resources that we have. Dominic, if you wouldn't mind pulling up and sharing on the screen the web page. Thank you. This is a link on the town's homepage. If you make it just to Coventry, RI.gov, you'll see a link for zoning code updates to address state law mandates. We've got a little summary there. We've also got a handful of PDF attachments that do include the document that I'm going to be reviewing tonight. That is the original ordinance that has the staff suggested changes integrated in. It's also got a lot of other background information on the process that we went through. I think it's important to note that this is a resource that we intend to leave available so that any interested members that are learning about the process or even learning after the hearing tonight will be able to know where to go to learn more and to see the documents. We're trying to make this as open and transparent as we can. Now, if you would not mind moving on, Dominic, to the not that one, the one that I had you open, the PDF document. Yeah, actually, you know what? That does look right. It's a different title than I think I had, but that does look like the right document. So this is the document that we handed out tonight. This is the document that is the original ordinance with the suggested changes that staff have developed. And what I'd like to do is not to give a full broad overview on all of the content. That would take a while. I think we were here for at least 2.5 hours on November 6th. But I think it's worthwhile just pointing out a few of the edits that we've made to this document, because truly this is the hearing in which we're vetting all of those considered changes. And I think it's worth just making sure that you've had an opportunity to see them and that anyone that's interested in this matter has had an opportunity to see that there are changes to this document that are being considered tonight. So let's just get right into it. The ordinance document itself begins with a section on the schedule of zoning district and use regulations. I'll just state that what you're seeing here from a formatting perspective is that the original code is in black, or the original ordinance is shown in black. Where staff recommended an insertion, it's shown in blue. Where staff has recommended a deletion from that original ordinance, it's shown in red. So right up front, you see that there's actually a handful of language in this ordinance that we're recommending removing. And that language was part of the original zoning code. And as a very quick summary, this is part of our strategy to temporarily put a halt on special use permits in the community. We discussed this at November 6th, so I won't go into the details of that, but I'll be available for any questions. I see one right now.
Solicitor has a question.
Yep.
Mr. McLean, just so that we're clear on what's before the public and the council, at the first reading of the ordinance, the first reading document is the document that's contained in the council package for tonight.
Yep.
Okay. And essentially what you're asking the council to do is to take that document and adopt as an amendment to ordinance 2023-4, those strikeouts in red and those additions in blue.
That's correct.
And
So
those are strikeouts in red and additions in blue made to the ordinance document that was introduced as 2023-4 on November 6th.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely correct.
you.
And thanks for that clarification. So we'll briefly go through this. And like I said, I think it is worth vetting the changes that are being suggested as part of this hearing. The language that's being struck for this first section of code is related to this concept that we are putting a temporary hold on special use permits. Without going into much detail, that is a strategy, a defensive strategy that we're adopting to ensure that we're not allowing any unintended special use permits to potentially be granted without what we would consider a proper, rigorous review. And we need to come back with perhaps addressing different special use permits differently moving forward based on this new state law that is essentially making special use permits more permissible as a whole across the state. So that's what you're seeing on that first page. And the one addition is that we're addressing that it's the zoning official for the community that is will determine if any proposed use is similar to another use and can be considered in the current zoning code. But we're removing any language that results in a special use permit process, which is what's going on here. let's, Dominic, if you will scroll down. I'll just suggest on page 2, it's more of that strategy. What you're seeing there on that second page are language being removed to remove any instance where a special use permit could be triggered. Again, our intent is to bring much of this back, but it will look different and there will be different criteria and standards for special use permits in 2024. Dominic, if you will please scroll through the document, and I think you're going to see several pages now where there's no intended changes. This is code that is addressing DPR, our development plan review standards, and most of it is being removed from this section and being brought to the subdivision regulations. Great. So Dominic, if you will scroll up just a touch for me. A little farther. All right. So we've got a few changes here to the adaptive reuse section. And if you will scroll back down to where there's the colored changes, all that's happening here as our recommended changes to adaptive reuse are just cross-referencing different sections of code as that's been evolving through this project. And some of it's referencing different sections in zoning and some of it's referencing different sections of the subdivision regulations. You can move on down. Stop right there. We do have a section of our code related to our technical review committee. This is a new committee that we're establishing. It's essentially going to assist with the heavier load of staff reviews that are going to need to occur with the new state law. So we've introduced it and enabled it through zoning. And what you see here are changes of additions in the blue language, really just clarifications, nothing really substantive happening here other than just adding that any member of the TRC has the ability to send a designee, which is really if that person's absent, can't make that meeting, we want to be able to have that perspective still brought to the meeting in one shape or another. You can scroll down a little bit more, Dominic. You're seeing here, we're just a few corrections to make proper references to titles, planning director as opposed to town planner. The TRC, instead of shall, may review the following types of applications because there may be instances where the TRC is not able to render a meeting within a timely fashion, and we don't want to be caught in a situation where we cannot move an application forward and we're forced to approve it because the TRC couldn't act on it. And then towards the end here, this is a cross-reference to the subdivision and land development regulations. And then this is the last one I think is important. That the TRC can take on other matters referred to it by the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board, or the Administrative Officer. In this community, the Planning Director is the Administrative Officer, but we did strike the line or the Town Council. That's because if the Town Council has a matter that it wishes to have further technical review of, we can absolutely help facilitate that, but the correct process would be to send it through the staff. Staff can address the concerns, and if it's a technical matter that staff wants to bring right to the TRC, we will absolutely do that. But it does require a process to go through the formal kind of, I guess you would say, through the staff so that we understand, is this an application we're referring to? What's the type of and the nature of the review that's needed? And is it appropriate to bring to the TRC? So that's the change being made there. The next sections of code are all in red. You're going to see a handful of sections of the zoning code that are being essentially, we're introducing to this document. This is new code that we're introducing to the amendments, but we're introducing it to the effect that we're removing it from zoning. Everything that you see here in red is being brought into the subdivision and land development regulations, part of the overall structure of our regulatory framework and ensuring that this is being handled properly with the different levels of review, Planning Commission and the TRC. So we can scroll right through that red language. We're essentially adding that to the new ordinance, but we're adding it to show that it's being removed from the zoning code. All of that exact language is being carried forward in the subdivision regulations, and it does not diminish its powers. Let's see, that's a small addition that's being made basically with regards to modifications and amendments to ensure we're consistent with state law here. You can keep scrolling. And I know this is a lot of complex information, but I'd be happy to take questions towards the end. Unified development review, and we've made a few changes here. Largely the changes are just to reflect cross-referencing the correct sections of code, whether that's the subdivision regulations or zoning. And then the last change we made, which was that this isn't the last change, but in terms of the the way the ordinance format works, this is where we've got the line that this ordinance shall take effect. And instead of upon passage and adoption, this ordinance shall take effect on January 1, because essentially we're not authorized. If we pass this tonight, we would not be authorized to actually enable this code because state law has not actually enabled this code. There are things that we're enabling here that state law has not given us our ability to do quite yet. So it's important that that adoption happens concurrent with state law. You can scroll down to the next section. Now you kind of enter, and I don't need to go through this line by line because there's no changes except for that top section. This is all the changes to the use table that are being made. And the theme here is that every time the use table shows the letter S, which reflects that a certain use in a certain district triggers a special use permit, we are crossing that out. Every instance in which a special use permit could be triggered is being removed from the code temporarily until we can bring them back with a regulatory framework that we feel is defensible. And that means that some of these won't be coming back as S's. They might be coming back as permitted with additional regulations, or they might be coming back as a not permitted use. And we'll have to, that'll be something that staff will bring back to you in the first half of 2024 with the intent to bring it to you in separate stages, because there are special use permits that are not as necessarily controversial or that require a deep dive, but are important to allow businesses to continue operating and uses and the town normal flow of operations to continue to move. And those more complicated and complex special use permits, we will take a deeper dive on those. So I think we're going to bring them back to you in phases where some of them, I think it's just allow business to move forward where we don't think a deep dive is necessary. And then we'll bring back a second set where we think the deep dive was necessary. And we're prepared now to talk about that structure. And we've prepared something for you to review. That covers my background and overview. So I'm open to any questions that the council may have.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Thank you. I actually have 3 questions on the very last part. So on the items, I know that the majority of them are changing the special use permit to not permitted. But I had 3 items I hoped you could comment on.
Sure.
And my pages are different than yours, so I don't know how we're going to do this. So
Did you end up getting this document with the color coding?
no, I just have what's in the packet. So I have page 41 of 125. This one?
Yep, it's just, yep, that's the one we've been looking at.
Okay.
And that one just arrived to you tonight. That's essentially the document that we just reviewed there, but I could try to track along if you've got certain sections you want to jump to.
All right, just give me a sec here. So table 6-1, page 24, very first one, under residential A02. The use is accessory living quarters in-law.
Yep.
So this would be changing all the special use permits to permitted.
Yep.
I mean, I generally know what an in-law apartment is, but can you just give me an idea why currently is a special use permit needed for something like this?
I think it's a good question. In-laws are an interesting case because essentially Coventry has historically had in its code that an in-law apartment, whether it's attached or detached, the attached is what you see as O2, the detached is what you see as O3. We've always held a code that they are allowed through a special use permit. State law has trumped us on that for a few years now. So state law says you're not allowed to only permit in-laws through a special use permit. You're allowed to have some performance standards, but you have to make them permissible. You have to allow for them to be permitted as a by right use. I will say that on this particular issue, state law is currently clear as mud on in-laws. There are certain sections of state law that say an in-law has to be for a family member, and there's other sections of state law that says it doesn't. I know that the state's legislative intent on in-laws was to address them, and they had a bill that was intended to clarify the state law that did not get passed in this most recent session. But I think the anticipation is that it likely may be passed in this next one. But to answer your question, the S's are going to P's because essentially if we turn this to an N or a P, it really does not impact the fact that they're still permissible. State law trumps our ability to make them not permissible. For the attached, which is O2, we have performance standards. The performance standards are helpful. They're performance standards that say you can't create a second front door. That the attached in-law, even if it's an addition to the primary dwelling, cannot take on the look of a duplex or take on a look that detracts from the look of a single family residence.
So as long as they're following those other things, we're
That's
probably approving them anyways. Okay.
That and the reason why I left that as P is because I think it gives us better leverage to suggest that if someone does have an attached in-law, and granted, if we made it a special use permit, it's still allowed. If we made it not a special use permit and we said it's an in, it's still allowed. But by leaving it P, the performance standards that we have in our code right now, I think are further strengthened and enabled. And we're allowed to basically ensure they're not oversizing these things and not creating second doors.
Okay.
We have code that we can live with. On the other one, 03, detached, we don't have good code. So really we're kind of already, I would say, working with code that isn't applicable. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure I was thinking of the right things. I don't have any issue with that, but there's only a handful of these that you actually suggested we change from special to permitted.
Yeah,
So I have two other quick items I wanted to
Sure.
ask about. Sorry, it's on my page.
I know.
Let me-
Was it churches in general business?
Oh, no.
Not that?
Have a church wherever you want.
Okay.
So, okay, it's my page 50. Let me.
You say my page 50, you mean the big packet?
Yeah, that's in the packet. It's not in the, sorry.
What's the latest section?
Transportation, communications and utilities.
Let me see if I can find that with you. That was the use type.
Number 17. Under transportation. This is on your packet.
I'm
33.
following you. I'm getting there. Yep.
Yeah, so 33.
Telecommunication antennas.
Yeah, so number 17.
Yep.
At the
So
very end, you're suggesting we change special use to permitted.
yeah.
Can you just elaborate on why
sure,
that's the
sure.
suggestion?
And in general, I'd say, out of the couple hundred S's, almost all of them went to an N, with a few instances where I thought, okay, this is an instance where I think there's a potential more common sense adjustment. Because this wasn't a blind change that we made to all of the code. We actually did want to go through some thoughtful process of, is there an instance where an S should become a P? Because it's not controversial. This is essentially code where there is some structure and some performance standards that guides this. And you'll see that, there's Article 9 and there's, probably other sections of code that help get performance standards to this. When I looked at this, I saw that in the business park and the industrial 1, they're permitted. The industrial 2 and the industrial 1 do have some similar use categories. Essentially, we're allowing more intensive industrial uses. So that I2 is a place where we generally, it fits the use profile of an I1 pretty closely. And because of that, I thought this is a place where that type of use was maybe better to be permitted and consider it with the batch of other performance standards that are allowed, as opposed to restrict it. That was just, honestly, having vetted this just a bit on my own and vetted it with prior planning staff and a few other people that know the community pretty well, we thought that was a more common sense fit for how the rest of the code lays out. That being said, I can't say that I'm, absolutely married to it, but we thought that was a more common sense allowance.
Can you remind us what's an example of the difference between the industrial 1 and 2? Because I mean, I generally know what industrial is, but what's the difference between 1 and versus 2?
You're gonna really test me here.
Well, let me tell you what my possible concern is, which I'm not sure if it's a concern, which is why I brought it up.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Anytime I see telecommunication antennas and towers, I think turbines. Stuff in the sky that's destroying people's lives that are all around them. So that's what I'm concerned about is, do we now open ourselves up to structures being placed high into the sky and harming other people? So that's why I'm just trying to better understand what I see. We already have it permitted in industrial 1. What's the difference where it would be in industrial 2?
The industrial, and this is, you know, definitely I'm working on 5 months of background on the community, but my understanding is the industrial 1 are areas that are designated for larger lots, generally in the middle of the community. I won't say the middle geographically, but they're more centralized in the community. And, you know, they're kind of intended for a lot of new development of these types of uses. The I-2 in comparison is where a lot of the older industrial uses exist. So in sort of more of the mill areas. In either case, most of the time, there are regulations that guide us on these things. That being said, you know, I'd say these are probably more look akin to an antenna or, you know, something that it might even be termed a tower, even if it's 10 feet tall on top of a structure. But I guess the idea would be this would be allowing this perhaps in some of the older industrial areas where we currently allow it in the business park, which is Central New England. That's the BP. That's the other district it's allowed. And then the I-1, which are larger industrial lots that are more centralized in town. Actually, there's a handful off of Flat River Road as you head down east off of Flat River Road. That's about the most that I can describe, but having vetted this with previous planning staff, namely John Studley, who is still a resource to our department and does know this community quite well, and a few other people that know the community quite well, we thought this was a little more of that common sense fit. But this is probably a precursor to the kind of discussions we'll be having when we bring all the special use permits back and have to draw hard lines between where they should be allowed or not. That being said, I'm not married to it, so.
Yeah, that's fine. I can't think of any major concerns. It was just,
Yep.
I just wanted to throw it out there. And I had one last item I just wanted to understand a little more thoroughly. Let me just see what page I have. All right, so it's on my page 57.
Is it also in that use table? So is this like 7 pages after that last one?
Basically, so give me 1 second. Personal services, number 7.
I'm there. Travel agency?
Yes, so,
What is the page back?
oh, jeez.
I don't know that.
Oh, the one that.
Oh, the one that I have, it's page 40 of 45.
Yes, and in the packet, it's 57 of 125. Okay, so personal services, number 7. I was curious why you were suggesting, let me see here, in the, I don't know what BP stands for, but
That's the
like
business
this
park. That's Center
business
New England.
parks, Center New England.
Yep.
Why we suggested a no for travel agency and newspaper office versus permitted.
I mean, that's actually a good case where I think it could be permitted. I don't see a negative downside of allowing a travel agency in the business park. Frankly, I don't see a big issue with allowing it in even the industrial zones. But, you know, the task at hand was to try to do what I would say is a common sense evaluation of how does this line up with the other zones. I think if it's allowed in our village commercial zones, which is like the Main Street Village Commercial, that's what's occurring right down there at the intersection with South Main. We're allowing it in our general business, that's Tioga. Why would we not allow a travel agency in the business park? I think it's a valid question. I think that I would have no issues with that in becoming a P. This is the type of exercise that we'll be doing in the first half of 2024. And as we remove S's, you know, why would we not just allow these things in common sense places? I think there's a chance that this might end up being permitted in the industrial zones too, because I
Yeah.
don't see that being a nuisance
Yeah.
or removing from the spirit of those sections of code.
Okay, so so out of the three things that I asked to go over, I don't have any concerns with the first two. And then this one, no concerns. We can, I was fine with the other suggested changes. Thank you. It'd be helpful to hear from the council if there's any other changes, because I'm not, you know, this is my hill to die on. If we do this, make this change tonight or wait for them to come back, either way, I'm fine.
Yeah, no, so what I'd prefer we do is, if the council has any more comments or questions, make them now, but this is really the public hearing portion, so as soon as this body is done, I'd like to turn it over to public comment. And then once public comment concludes, we'll close the public hearing and then the council can conduct its
Okay.
business.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Shockley.
Thank you. I just have a couple. My first is just to clarify, the residential section. There's a few areas about borders, and once you get over to,
Page,
oh, sorry, it's page 24. Is this trying to eliminate things like Airbnb?
This is an interesting question. Airbnb is, in my opinion, usually dealt with very specifically in those communities that wish to deal with it. Those communities that have a lot of them, Providence, a
if I'm
Newport.
not mistaken, there's actually special legislation coming on short-term
Yeah,
rentals.
and
guidance
so,
from the
yeah, and they're
state.
generally given a specific designation. This is old code. This is old code that if I really thought through, it might not even be applicable to Airbnb, because it talks about, you know, sometimes renting a room in a house. The idea is we're not attempting to change the rules of Airbnb with what we were doing here. This is older code that sort of harkens back to an era where I think it was, you know, truly like a border facility. And we didn't see the value in trying to allow them. I asked those people that are familiar, they have not seen like a border application in this community in quite a while. So we didn't see there being a lot of risk to just taking those S's and making them N's. We're not really holding up business.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. My only other question comes from page 18, the large section that you took out and just said you were moving and it wouldn't impact it at all. I just didn't want to gloss over that
Sure.
because such a large section is being taken out and moved.
18.
It starts on page 18.
Yep,
It's a
yep.
multiple.
If we could, the solicitor just had a comment on the border. Okay. All right, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. This is all language that is currently exists within our zoning code, the land development section of our zoning code. We're adopting a strategy where because of the fact that we are now dealing with projects that are being handed to us at different scales. Now there's different classifications of a major land development and a minor land development, which is, this is a bit of a new posture the state is taking, and all the communities are adopting a different approach to it. Our approach is that we're putting a lot of the regulations that handle land development into the subdivision regulations. I think it doesn't lose its power. These regulations are still enforceable within the subdivision regulations on all the projects, but it allows these regulations to be addressed differently when there's a minor project that gets a different scale of review than a major. So essentially what's happening here is just like even though this is red and this is new, this is basically taking the same path that entire section of development plan review code, which it was part of the original document. And it really just axed out a lot of the development plan review code because we're bringing that into the subdivision regulations. And there's no longer going to be complex development plan review applications, but we're taking that code and we're preparing to address it for minor and major land developments. And the idea is that this section of code in red is sort of part of that same idea, but we need to work them out so that the new DPR code as it moves into the subregs and the new land development code as it moves into the subregs, they live together and that we can sync them. So if there's any issues or inconsistencies, we've used that document to sync them better. I know that's a bit of a kind of academic answer. I don't know if that helps address your question a bit.
That's fine. I really wanted to go over it for the general public as well, who's listening.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because it was so large of a change that was getting.
For sure. And it's a late arriving change. So I think it's worth making sure everyone knows what's happening.
Thank you.
Mrs. Solicitor.
If I could, through the chair, address something that Councilwoman Shockley had raised with respect to quote unquote Airbnbs. The issue really concerns itself with short-term rentals and not so much targeting a particular Airbnb is commonly the concept, but they're really short-term rentals. That has been addressed by ordinance in other communities and successfully. We do not presently have that ordinance scheme here. That's something that has been on the drawing board that I brought with me, but on hold, given the potential changes to state law. We're going to see what that looks like. But it is a problem in other communities for sure. And is a way to skirt around other permitted uses of property. So we're going to be watching that closely. That's something that we had discussed in this context, but we're going to hold on that until we see what the state does first, because we certainly don't want to put something in place and then have it preempted by state regulations. So.
Any other discussion from members of the council before we go to public? All right. Any members of the public and council chambers like to make a public comment during public hearing on this ordinance, proposed ordinance amendments? Members of the public on Zoom, just raise your hand. State your full name and address for the record. Welcome back.
Yes, hello. Cheryl Kane, 185 Reed Schoolhouse Road. I'm calling in reference to, I know that there's gonna be a lot of building going on in Coventry, and I was just wondering, have you addressed any of the ordinances that we spoke about previously about landscapers and all the unmarked vehicles that we have that have businesses in the town of Coventry and residential areas? Because if we're having all these people move into these different plats, my concern is that they're gonna move in and then all of a sudden next door you have a business there. So I feel that before we go and we pass any of these ordinances or amendments, I feel that we should probably address our ordinances that we really do need to get up to date, especially when it comes to how we have some of our homeowners that we have wash machines in their front yards, dryers. I mean, if they want to have a fence around there and they don't, the public won't see it, I understand, but I'm concerned of, you know, rats and just all other things that will bring all the garbage that we are now having problems in these plats. My other thing is I have a question about clusters. When we have the clusters for the minor subdivisions, is there going to be certain frontage and setbacks and buffers? Is that something Mr. McLean could express to me, explain?
You just
Sure, I can do my best on that. For the first point, our office has been in touch with Ms. Kane on some issues that she's had with regards to zoning enforcement. And I'll just offer that the focus of the current changes to the code are entirely to address the state law mandates, and that, you know, while I understand that, you know, there's other issues that people may wish to bring to the forefront of the community, we particularly wanted to ensure that this code was only to address the limited purview of the state law updates. That's because we wanted this to basically, these are pretty sweeping changes to our code, and we didn't want to mix and match sweeping changes to the code that were forced by the state with other changes to the code that we may wish to also take on. And so I guess that addresses the first part of the question. In terms of the second part of the question, yes, clusters will still be allowed in the town. There's not going to be a change to the cluster regulations. There's still an ability to use a cluster to reduce your lot size, and in exchange, you give us a minimum required open space. Basically, you're giving us common open space for reducing your lots. It doesn't allow an increase in density. It really just allows you to shrink your house sizes or your lot sizes and shrink your development impact into a smaller area in exchange for preserving open space in the rest of the lot. That will continue just as it is in the code. The only change would be that if a cluster development wishes to develop a public roadway, then it'll trigger a major subdivision. If a cluster development wishes to do it through frontage development, then they could still be considered as a minor subdivision. But that's more the broad change to the state code. The cluster isn't changing. It's just like every other subdivision. If there's a roadway creation, it becomes a major. If it's no roadway creation, it can still remain as a minor. So no specific changes being considered tonight that affect clusters differently.
Okay, I was just wondering if there was any way to increase the buffers on the clusters for the future. Just because that I've been talking to residents in the area on Town Farm Road, Whitehead Road, and they've been complaining about all the noise pollution in the area recently, that they're hearing it because of all, I guess, Poor Farm Road has a new cluster over there. And what's happening is they're just taking down all the trees. So now now the sound dampening is gone, and the people in the area now are experiencing all the noise pollution from Route 117. And I guess also because of all the trees taken down off Hope Furnace Road, you have a development over there with 32 homes going. So the people in this area now are having issues with all the noise instead of the peace and quiet that they have had over the years. So I didn't know if you were able to maybe increase the trees instead of having them just completely take all the trees down.
I would say, in general clusters, the main goal of a cluster is to create undisturbed open space that would generally surround a development. So a cluster by its nature, if someone opts for that choice, it will likely include, greater protection of trees and greater separation from a new development to the abutting development. Our code does not mandate clusters. A developer is still allowed to develop their lot without a cluster, which probably would result in more tree disturbance. We're not using this opportunity with these changes that are in front of us to make changes to those types of sections of code, because again, we're really focused right now on just doing what we need to address the state mandates. I think those are interesting questions in terms of how do we better protect against noise pollution, and better protect or maybe encourage clusters as a tool to enhance buffers. But I'd say that's a conversation I'd be very happy to have, but I don't think it belongs in this particular series of changes to address the state law.
Okay. Has anyone asked the state about the land owned by the state? For instance, the Big River Reservoir, that project was it's in actually West Greenwich. And I know that land has never been used, and has highway access. So has anybody gone to the state and say, listen, all the land that the state owns, can we build on that land instead of making all these towns and cities have an issue of having this mass building going on at this time? If they're right now, I'm just concerned about the school, the police department, the fire department. Do we have the manpower for this mass building of all these homes?
No, I can't say that anyone's gone to the state to ask about those properties. But I would say that, again, that's probably not specific to the changes that are being considered with this hearing tonight.
Okay. Have you talked, I mean, you, Ms. McLean, have you gone to your own home of residency and talked about these state mandates to where you live to see if they're changing? Are they going to go for January 1st and have these mandates requirements by that time where you live? Have you talked to them?
I mean, I've had conversations with planners across the state. You know, we're fortunate that we do
Yeah.
have a good resource and a consultant that is actually going through this process in multiple communities across the state and is giving us lessons learned across the board.
Mhm.
I don't want to, you know, I haven't directly engaged with my own home community's municipality about it, but we're aware of the best practices to handle this. And I think we're adopting some of the better procedures to handle this for Coventry.
If I may, Director McLean, Ms. Kane.
Yeah.
There's no extension in sight that we're seeing from the state on this. The expectation for all 39 cities and towns is that we have to comply by January 1 with these changes. So Coventry's fortunate enough in the situation that we had our comprehensive plan pretty much almost done to be able to inform this. And we have a team in the planning department that was able to pull this together quickly in limited time to meet that January 1 deadline. But I think to your point, there are a lot of communities who are way behind, but that doesn't make the deadline move out further in the future. It's still, that's what we have to comply with, and state law is always going to supersede town charter or town code.
It just concerns me that Wood is just 3 out of all the cities and towns that are doing it: Cumberland, Coventry, and Lincoln. The ratio just to me is not that great.
Those 3 communities are
Mhm.
sharing a consultant with technical assistance funds that were awarded from the state as a grant. That doesn't mean those are the only 3 communities that are participating in this. The requirement is on all 39 cities and towns.
Okay. Do you think that increase of the impact fees would help the town? Because, well, because of all the impact that we have on our roads and everything else going to happen, if we increase this impact fees, will that help us?
If we could just keep to the ordinance changes, that would be great. I just
Okay.
want to make sure we stay within Open Meetings Act. I don't mean to cut you off. I appreciate.
No, that's fine. The only thing, I only have one more statement. My statement is, before you make any kind of decisions on this, that the people that are going to be buying these homes that are coming to Coventry, there's one thing that is very important, is the quality of life. So I think that before anybody comes and buys a property in Coventry, take a ride down Potter Street, Abbott's Crossing Road, and Reed Schoolhouse Road, Oak Cave and Platt, see what the neighborhood looks like, then come to Coventry, because that's what's going to happen. That's what you're going to be up against. So before you put down that high value of that money, that $700,000, see what you're getting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on Zoom, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Nick Longo, 5 Autumn Ridge Road. I have a quick question about windmills and wind turbines, and I find that on page 34 of the packet, under the section entitled Transportation, Communications, and Utilities. And I see that it's no across all zones, windmills and turbines, no across all zones. But then under comments, I see something that seems conflicting to me. And I understand it's allowed by right for municipally owned properties. But here's my question. Applicant must demonstrate that light flicker caused by the turbine will not negatively affect nearby homes. So I guess my question is, are windmills and wind turbines not permitted across all zones, or are they permitted under certain circumstances?
I'll address that the best I can. The only changes that are being considered through this immediate amendment are to take those zones where a windmill was allowed through a special use permit, and they are now no longer being allowed through a special use permit in those zones. We're taking the S's, and this is on page 33 of the packet that I handed out tonight. So in the RR5, RR3, RR2, and the R20, we're removing the S and giving it an N. I don't want to comment on, the municipally owned properties, and the abilities there. That's not something that was germane to the special use permit review. So that kind of falls in the category of a general code question that might be a good one, but probably outside of the scope of what's being changed tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Longo. Any other members of the public on Zoom, raise your hand to be brought in. Last call, public comment, council chambers and Zoom. Going once. Going twice. 3 times. At this time, I'll take a motion to close public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Members of the council, we were given tonight, in addition to the packet from Director McLean, a decision letter. You should see a memo titled Recommendation to Town Council regarding Ordinance 2023-4, proposed amendments to the zoning code. This was the Planning Commission's public hearing on November 15th. They reviewed the recommendation of the proposed ordinance that's in front of us this evening. It's important to note that they did vote to unanimously, 7 members voted aye, no nays, to send a positive recommendation to this body on ordinance 2023-4 as amended. Could I have a motion to accept this document into the record?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
So now before us, we have on page 22 of your packets, ordinance of the Town Council, an amendment of Chapter 255 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Coventry entitled Zoning, ordinance number 2023-4. To commence discussion, do I hear a motion to approve the ordinance as amended? Solicitor Angel.
So if the motion is to approve what's in your packet, it will not be the ordinance as amended, which was what was reviewed by the planning board and which is in front of you this evening with the red line in the,
So you're talking about this one.
that's correct.
What's different from this one than what's in the packet?
I might suggest that the language for the motion could be to adopt the ordinance as presented this evening with amendments. I think the only difference was the reference to the packet might
Okay,
indicate that it was the initial ordinance.
fair. Okay. Okay. So I'll withdraw that ask and instead ask the council for a motion to approve the ordinance of the Town Council ordinance number 2023-4, amendment of chapter 255 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Coventry entitled Zoning, as presented from the Director of Planning this evening, including blue, red, and black line edits. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc, second by Councilmember Shockley. Council discussion. Vice President LeBlanc.
A question for the solicitor. Given that we were given this packet this evening and the taxpayers and residents were not given this packet, would it make sense to defer this vote? Give the public time to digest these additional changes and then for the council to vote at a subsequent meeting? Just a question.
That's really council preference. It would not create any legal defect for the council to vote on the ordinance as amended and as presented.
That's fair. And we did have a hearing tonight and anybody who wanted to speak on it could have spoke. So just wanted to at least ask the question.
because then we'd have to advertise all over again.
I would just ask them the question.
No,
but,
I'm asking
yeah.
if that would be your preference.
I mean, in all fairness, it's a new packet. And the residents didn't get to see the additional changes. It wasn't posted to the website.
So my
So-
question still stands.
Ordinance is on town website. When was it posted to town's website?
It was posted today, and this document was assembled essentially today, but this is the same set of changes that were provided to you as part of the November 6th meeting, and that meeting was videoed and has been available. I can genuinely say that any person that's expressed to me they've been interested in this, we've tried to share all of the documents, including the documents that were shared with you on November 6th. And I've tried to point them to the website that we've been using as a resource all along. But I understand the question, which is, I mean, essentially, we always knew that there were going to be changes that were going to be delivered to you and needed to be considered specifically tonight. So I understand the nature of the question, but I would suggest those individuals who have expressed interest in this to our office, we've tried to be as transparent as possible, make copies of all of the potential changes that were being made. And we've put the document that you reviewed tonight alongside the original ordinance on the website. So any interested party can certainly go on there and look at what's happening. And any interested party, certainly could have reviewed what happened on November 6th. And, could have followed up. So there's been an attempt to be as transparent as we can,
Appreciate it.
even though we understand that we knew there were going to be changes that were going to be essentially heard and reviewed specifically tonight, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. I'm good.
Councilor Ludwig.
I'll just go back to the earlier thing I was talking about.
Yep.
I'm fine with approving it as it is tonight if we want to. It's not a big deal to me. The only item for possible change to bring up was just allowing the travel agency or newspaper office in the business park area. So changing that, it's special use permit suggested as an N for not permitted. I really don't.
This was page 40 in the.
Yeah,
big
page
packet.
40 of today's packet.
Yep.
And possibly making that permitted, but I'm not married to this, so it's if we want to just keep it clean and approve everything as it is, I'm fine with that, as long as we can ask Director McLean to bring it back as part of the updated items.
What's the pleasure of the council?
I'm good with approving the packet as is.
I am as well. If there was a pending travel agency trying to
I think it's
open, I
fine.
think that would be different. But I think because you already mentioned you'd be coming forth with changes to these, just making the note that should be one.
And I think it's a fair thought to have brought up, because this is the exact kind of thing where we're trying to make the common sense. And I think this is a good example of a common sense type of change. What's the harm of a travel agency? But, I do anticipate this is one of probably hundreds where there's, something that, is in this area of common sense. And we're going to attempt to bring everything.
Don't
that
scare
we
me
can
with
back.
a good time, Doug.
Oh yeah,
We're ready.
Well, let's just put it this way. The conversations to come in 2024 on what do we really want to do with special use permits will be harder than this conversation tonight, because I think we'll have to take a deep dive. And this would be in the category of, okay, these are the layups. These are the easy, the low hanging fruit that we want to bring quickly, just so we can keep this and many other reasonable business activities just moving forward. And then the ones that are real deep thinkers, we'll have a long conversation there.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm fine with approving it as the package tonight.
Okay. Director McLean, I'm kind of confused now based on Vice President's question. So what materially is different in this, what you handed us, from what was in the packet posted with the Secretary of State's office?
The packet posted with the Secretary of State was the original ordinance that we quote unquote read at our September meeting that included just what you see in black.
Yep.
Now, what's in red is there's certain changes that were previously included in here that we're recommending changing, meaning that there was zoning language that was already in this, and we're recommending no, that actually that relates to special use permits. And we've adopted a different strategy. Some of the strategies we've had have different changes throughout the code, and we've caught some things. Frankly, we've caught them as quickly as we can, but they're midstream. So you're seeing changes that we've caught after it was initially read. And you're seeing kind of an evolved look at where different sections of code need to live now that we've kind of wrapped our arms around the subdivision regulations. So essentially what you're seeing is anytime there's a color, that's where it's different from what it was initially introduced. And that was the point of why I wanted to make sure that there was at least some discussion of those items tonight. Everything that you see that's in color was also discussed in great detail at the November 6th meeting.
So my question to you is, given the nature of these changes
Yep.
from the state, a member of the public could be against one of them till they're blue in the face. We have to
Oh,
make the
yeah.
adjustment.
This is still all of the intent of the changes that are in front of you are to best position this community for the mandated state law changes that are coming. So every change that's in front of you, even where we had wiggle room, we used the wiggle room to best position ourselves to be defensive.
Yep.
And to, have effective land use decision-making come January 1.
Right. Got it. Okay, further discussion on the motion from members of the council? Any last words, Mr. McLean?
Nope. Staff is supportive of what we had. I've appreciated the council. The planning commission has had a big role in a lot of this as well. And our zoning board has joined our joint workshops as well. It's been a big effort, and I appreciate the time and effort that you've spent on it as well.
Thank you. I do want to send a lot of gratitude to you and your team, the administration, Mr. Flynn and his board, and the zoning board as well. It was a really collaborative experience. People took it seriously. We had great attendance and participation. So, and I appreciate you helping to lead that charge.
And I'll give kudos to Ashley Sweet, our consultant as well, who we worked very closely with. She's very smart on these issues. So she's here tonight, was a resource if we needed it. So thank you to her as well.
Thank you. Last call discussion from members of the council. Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes,
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
thank you. Moving on to licenses. Item A, new mobile food establishment license, Rise and Grind, Rebecca Hammond, yearly license. Pages 63 to 64 in your packet. Do I hear a motion to approve the license?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion. Manager Perillo, any comments?
No concern with the license.
Is anyone here from Rise and Grind like to speak? Discussion from members of the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Item B, new mobile food establishment license, La Locarita Food, Lucia Caron Lopez. Yearly license, this is on page 65 to 66 in our packet. Do I hear a motion to approve the license?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion, is anyone here representing this license? Hi, would you like to come up? Sorry for butchering. Just talk a little about your business.
Okay, so my name is Hector Kino. So we just started this year. So we're looking to do like some special events that's going on in Coventry. So that's the reason why we're looking to get a license in Coventry. But yeah, so we pretty much trying to like start up, see what is the whole food truck is all about. That's about it.
Are you guys joining Friday's event? Saturday?
Saturdays, yes, Saturdays events. Yeah.
What kind of food?
We try to like mix it up with some American food and Spanish food. So we got like a little bit of both going on in our food truck.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Members of the council, discussion, questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's no further discussion. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Members of the council, could I get a motion to take the agenda out of order?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc,
I'll second it.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Just some others I want to bump up before we get to meatier discussion items, just to get them in and out. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Moving on to resolutions of the council. Item A, resolution 2023-88, to enter into an agreement with RI DEM for a recreation grant for Parks and Recreation Department, page 98 in your packet. Resolution approval to apply for a 2024 recreational development grant for Harris Park with DEM for approximately $120,000. Resolution number 2023-88. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc,
I'll second it.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion, Director Blumenthal?
Good evening, council. So this is Harris Park, 108 Howard Avenue. I spoke with our grant writer as well as the committee that decides which projects get funded from DEM. We went over several possibilities, and they were particularly interested in this site because of the dense population and because in our charter, it said that that park should have a playground and play structures. So after getting some quotes and speaking to different vendors, we decided that it'd be approximately $100,000 for the playground structures and edging, and then the town would contribute approximately $20,000 through either labor or through actual cost of purchasing items.
Discussion from members of the council? Councilor Ludwig?
I just was curious, for whatever the matching funds are, the 20K or so, do we have that in budget, or are we looking to spend that in a different way?
So I spoke to the town manager today. He said that we have it in our capital budget.
In the capital budget? Okay. Thanks.
And yeah, unfortunately, we had to take that playground down and others in 2018. So
Councilmember Shockley?
That was one of my questions, so thank you. My other question is just, what equipment do you know? Like what this is buying?
yeah. So we'll have to go out to bid, obviously, but sorry, I just put this together today. But you can see.
You know it.
I'm not.
Nice. Oh, I remember seeing these. Thank you.
So there's various play structures. There'll be like an ADA accessible swing area as well. So it'll be very accessible, and there'll be slides and like new swing structures. So the latest equipment for playgrounds. And there's like a rendering of what it will look like.
Where is Harris Park? Really?
Yeah, behind
That's in
there.
my district?
Yeah.
I've never even heard of it. Harris Park. I thought it was in your district.
Quidnick's my.
So for Quidnick, we actually applied for the community development block, the community
CDBG.
CDS, thank you. So so we're still waiting to hear back from them. So we didn't want to apply for the same funding for the same project.
Further discussion from members of the council? Manager Perloni, comments?
No, I just want to thank Raina and Lisa Andoja for doing a lot of work on this to kind of put this all together. This is kind of the last piece of the puzzle, is having a resolution from the council showing their support. So looking forward to this happening.
Thank you. Vice President LeBlanc?
Just timing. When would it be completed by?
So
But for anybody
when
listening.
we receive notice, it has to be submitted early December. I think we find out in the beginning of the new year, and then we'll have 2 years to complete the
2 years.
project.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You'll have 2 years, but you're not gonna looking to take the full 2 years.
No, I would like it to get this done as soon as possible. These communities have gone without playgrounds for quite a long time. So usually it would happen in the spring when the ground is warm enough, or in the fall to install them, and when I'll have staff to actually help
Got it.
with that process.
Great. Further discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes,
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's not my turn.
Moving on to report of other town officers and officials. Item B, Don Cowart, Superintendent of Coventry Public Schools, and Chris Deverna, Finance Director of Coventry Public Schools, quarterly report.
108 Howard.
Manager Pearl, I believe this was sent to counselors electronically via email.
Yes. Chris and Don sent that packet over that I
It looks like
forwarded to the council. It's a summary of their quarterly report along with their 3-year budget projections going forward.
Good evening, Don Cowart, Superintendent, Coventry Schools, with Chris Deverna, Finance Director for the school department. So we've been meeting with the Finance Director and Town Manager every month since probably August or September. And then we also have pretty frequent communication back and forth across the street throughout the week through email, things like that. And one of the things we decided fairly early on was it would be probably beneficial to the town and the community for us to be able to come before the town council and just give an update of where we are in our finances. And so we have prepared some documents, and some of them are documents we've already shared with the school committee to share with you tonight. We also are, and I'm just going to say it on the outset here, we're also working on our budget and preparing for that process, which will, I know you'll be voting on the budget calendar tonight, and then setting forth the meetings that we'll have together. And we'll be able to probably address a lot of your questions once we get into that whole budget process. So I'm gonna turn it over to Chris, let him go through it, and then obviously we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have.
Hello, just wanted to just give you an overview of what we provided. The 3-year projection is what's in the charter that we prepare. We had prepared and sent it over to the town for November 1st of this year. It's a projection that is based on mostly everything being the way it is right now, the numbers of personnel, et cetera. And then we make certain assumptions for increases, for inflation, salary increases, and other adjustments. And we did provide also for some perspective, like the historical perspective, we provided a previous one that had been prepared November 1st of 2019. So you can just use those to compare back and forth and have some perspective. And then the other document in there, we provide the school committee updates of financial reports. So this is the most recent year-to-date comparative financial report that we provided to the school committee and discussed with them. So we're 4 months in. And so this is through year to date from July 1st through October 31st. And the primary, when you look at that report, the current year is to the left. On the right, you have a smaller table with some prior year numbers for comparison. I believe the town manager had forwarded over my email, which gave a little more context to it, but I'll repeat that in summary right now. One thing that I've pointed out and stressed to the school committee is when you're looking at salaries and benefits and you're looking at them comparatively, you'll note, for instance, that salaries as a percentage of where we are year to date, we're at through October at 32%. But if you were looking at that in comparison to the prior year, it was at 22%. And the reason for that is just how the accrual has been done each year, the year-end accrual. Just give you a brief summary. At the end of the year for financial reporting and audit purposes, we have to accrue what's to be paid over the summer. You may have roughly a $5.5 million accrual of salaries. What they would typically do is book that accrual on June 30th. And then the very next day on July 1st, they would reverse it. So you'd have 5.5 million added to expense one day. The very next day, you have a negative expense of 5.5 million. It worked for purposes of annual financial reporting, but when we're looking at year-to-date reporting like this on a regular monthly basis, it sort of skews everything because you'll begin the year with a negative expense, 5.5 million. So it's going to draw it down. So that's why you're only at 22% year-to-date last year. What I decided to do is to try to match those up. So now we're booking the year-end accrual on 6/30 of one year and then immediately reversing it, but posting it 12 months out. So 6/30 of the following year. So what's going to happen at the end of the year, we're going to end up posting another accrual and those two will offset. And typically you're going to have differences where the differences are due to sort of the timing, what the payroll period falls in, how many days you're accruing, and also, increases in salaries and stuff. But the net effect is more minimal that way. You're going to combine the two together and it's not going to cause large fluctuations in your year-to-date reporting. The only other thing I'll point out on this is on revenue, in particular state aid. You'll see that the state aid, I think it's like 20% on this versus 29% last year. And that's just due to the state aid gets transferred over RI pay, typically the last week of the month, but we don't really have any control over when they send that, and if it or how the last week of the month looks as far as work days. But if they send it over, if they transmit it via RI pay, on the 31st or the 30th of a month, it gets posted there, but it takes a little while to actually clear and be available for the town, and then for the town to be able to transfer it over to us. For monthly financial reporting purposes, we haven't done a accrual, and then we haven't done that. We've just posted it when it came in through the bank. So that's why this is, the state aid's over 2 million a month. So that's why you have a difference with that. With that, I'll just pause and see if anyone has questions or any comments.
Members of the council, discussion? Questions? What? Is this posted to the school's website, the department's website, the projection?
It's been to the school committee. I don't know if it's.
No, we shared it with the school committee, we shared it with the town council, town manager, and now with you tonight, but we didn't post it to the website. We can though.
Okay.
It would have been in the agenda, right? That's available. Yeah.
Right, to the agenda. So I'll also be including the 3-year projection in our budget document that we are preparing for next year. I want to kind of catalog it every year into the budget document as well, which will also be posted to the website.
We also received a question regarding the town's 3-year projection. I know Manager Pillow, you talked with Director Civetti.
Yes, we're hoping to have that by next week.
Great.
Yes.
Last call discussion, questions from members of the council? Council Ludwig.
Sorry. Be you. So admittedly, Manager Perlow forwarded this to us yesterday afternoon. I have not had a chance to review the documents in the last day. So I may have a few more questions after looking through it in a little more detail, but right now I don't, just because it's literally the first time I'm seeing it. So thank you for reviewing.
Sure, and happy to review, with you if you have questions after the fact and want to reach out.
Yeah, and I would extend the invitation to anybody on the town council that at any point, if you have a question about something with, finance or with the school department, we're available to answer questions at any time.
Councilmember Shockley.
This is just for my understanding. I know that schools and towns have to have a balanced budget. Is that why the current year always shows as balanced? Because we know our budget and we've adjusted our expenditures to match that, and we'll do the same in upcoming years. We're just showing what we expect.
Yeah, so I mean, the columns in this year-to-date report, it begins with the original budget, if there were any, significant adjustments to the budget. And then you really go to the third column, which is the year-to-date actual revenues and expenses. And then finally, the next column is percentages. And then finally, we have the column at the end is where we're gonna, as we go along, and if we have any reason to change the projection for going out for the full year, we would make adjustments to that. At this time, this last presentation of the school committee, we didn't have any projections that changed there. But that column, if we do, would end up resulting in a plus or minus, if you think you're coming in over or under.
And I appreciate the context for that sheet. I was actually asking about the projections that you've made.
Okay. So on the projections, you're starting with the fiscal year 24. So that was the original budget, which balances. Projecting to the future, given current variables and the assumptions we made, you do have a difference that needs to be resolved, when we go through the budget process. So, and that's not, I think that's why we provided the older projections too, just to see that has not been uncommon to, when at the time you're making the projections, to project that you may have a shortfall, depending on, how everything turns out. But as you go through the budget process, it's where you take a close look at everything that you can possibly do to balance that.
And my only other comment would be, I know that certain items at the bottom that go towards the maintenance costs will be funded through the bond. But just want to make sure that we're highlighting the trade personnel expenses, which really are part of the annual expenses we'll always have. I don't know, and this seems to be what falls outside of employee benefits and employee salaries.
So the questions on the trade.
So about the trade personnel, those are the people who work for the school, right? And who do take care of the school. They maintain.
Right, like a specific
mhm.
HVAC or.
Yeah, we have our own maintenance department, so we have a carpenter, we have a plumber, we have 2 vacancies right now that we're looking to fill, HVAC and electric. We have a number of non-licensed trade workers as well, and they basically maintain our buildings. If anything goes wrong, we want to try to deal with our own staff before we contract out with somebody else. And the way I understand the way it works is we can apply their salaries towards the maintenance requirement. So we've always had our whole requirement and then subtracted out those salaries to offset the amount that we have to then budget for. And our goal and our hope, like you said earlier, is to be able to use the bond projects that, span a number of schools and different scope of work, to start applying those to those capital maintenance requirements so that we meet that yearly requirement.
Great, thank you.
Vice President LeBlanc.
I believe this is germane to the conversation, but hopefully the solicitor will stop me if it's not. But how are the cash flows on the school side going? Before we had provided that or settled that intercompany balance, You guys had some cash flows issues. We then settled that. I think it was north of $2 million. Are we back into a period where we're having some cash flows issues, or in the foreseeable future we will? Just curious.
I mean, cash flow is always challenging it, but we're managing it, fine right now. We have some, we are anticipating, there's an amount that was budgeted for the school last year that we're expecting to receive soon as the tax revenues are coming in. Those, that 510,000 for capital, that will help. We do have some some larger payrolls that have certain payments in it that you don't experience, throughout the year. And some of those come up in December and early January. But as far as cash flows, we haven't been bouncing any checks or anything yet, and we've just been doing our best to manage it. It does, it has become a challenge going from the period of time where you did have a lot of activity in the due to, due from, because the school just didn't have its own bank accounts. You'd be more like Pawtucket school system, where they just didn't have they didn't have the bank accounts. Everything was paid for and received by the town. That's the way it used to occur in Coventry because of the complexities and the amount of time and administrative work that went into reconciling that due to, due from. Previous town manager and previous school department administration decided to move into having their own bank accounts to sort of alleviate that. We're sort of in a hybrid of what I guess they had intended, because we don't directly receive our own revenue. It still goes to the town, but we pay our own expenses. So I'd say, that inherently creates a little bit of a challenge for cash flow, but
Okay.
we've been managing it and working close with the town, and they've been very helpful. So.
Got it. My concern is that we settled that due to, due from, and then you guys had ESSER funds that you don't have anymore. And I was just curious, but thank you for the insight there. Appreciate it.
The other thing I'll mention is as a result of us having a deficit in prior years and having to notify the Auditor General and things seemingly a little bit tighter than we'd like, I did put in a freeze. And so we're very, very tightly monitoring everything, purchases, overtime, anything that is above and beyond what is built into our budget basically has to run through the two of us. And if it doesn't run through the two of us, it doesn't get approved. And so we've been monitoring our expenses very closely to make sure we don't lose track of how the money is being spent.
Speaking of the letter to the Attorney General, the last one that I had seen was, I think, like 2 months ago. Have we updated them on just how the current situation is? Or have we not? Have we let them know that we've done this freeze just so that they're aware?
We have our audit status update meetings where this is with the Auditor General, the town administration, our auditors, the school department, and some other representatives from the state. And it not only covers the status of the overall audit, but we are discussing where we are on that previous letter and the deficit, and what we're doing to work on closing up next year and moving forward, giving them updates. And we're as Don mentioned, we're really diving into the current budget process and planning. So there's a lot of work going on right now, looking forward to do what we can to improve things and be as efficient as possible.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any final discussion? Councilor Ludwig.
So I know we're also going to be looking at the budget calendar. But the budget calendar starts in January. So are we planning to have the session sometime later in December where we look over the possible upcoming budget?
I'd have to go to the budget calendar. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think we're supposed to have one in December where we have school committee and town council go over the high level numbers. We're supposed to meet before the end of the year. So I think that's in the charter actually. So I'd have to pull out the number.
I can follow up on that, definitely.
Okay. When we get to that part of the agenda
Yeah.
with Bob.
So we had actually a meeting yesterday with the Auditor General, our monthly call, and updating him on both the school and the town side. He asked if we had concerns with the school department. We advised them we did. Obviously based on the deficits that they've run the last couple of years and no longer having ESSER or fund balance. That's a concern for us. If they do have another problem this year, right now they're right on point, so it's good. And Chris did mention to him that the cuts that the superintendent's made and the oversight that is going on right now to keep this budget where it is, so it is going to finish balanced. During our meetings, which have been very productive, Director Civetti and I did bring to their attention their budget ask of 4% for next year is a concern. I know Superintendent Cowart did mention that during contract that he probably would be coming to us for 4%, and he is coming to us for 4% for the 25 budget. The concerning issue still is, even with that ask, there is still a $1.8 million deficit, even with the 2 million. So that's a big gap. I know a budget projection is just that, it's a guess, and there is a lot of work to do, but there is a lot to make up to get this budget where it needs to be. So
Yeah, so we
look
kind of
forward to it.
we look at that projection as a starting point, not an end point, because we're building it in October. It's fairly early in the year, and like Chris said, we have a variety of variables and assumptions. Some things we know, some things we don't know. Some things could work in our favor, some things won't. But we also know we can't start with a $1.8 million deficit, right? So as we start building our budget, our job is to address that. And so that's why, Chris kind of alluded to, we're doing a lot of work to try to make sure when we come in, we're not coming in with something that's unreasonable or not possible. So, we'll dig deeper into that when we get into the budget process. This is more of an update, but that's, we know where we're heading.
Anything further, Council Littlewig?
Thanks.
So I guess to that point, Superintendent, I understand that 1.8 obviously isn't the desired endpoint and that 4% is not your desired starting point, but that's such a large number to stare down. And I'm no math whiz here, but it basically shows that even close to an 8% local appropriation increase would barely be enough to cover the budget ask and a proposed deficit. And then we see it creep down from there. If I'm a taxpayer and I see this posted on the school department website, I mean, why shouldn't I be more concerned than just we'll figure it out? I mean, that should be alarming to everybody in the room.
If you look at, that's why Chris added also.
Yeah, I know, I understand.
Over the years, almost every year has shown a starting point of a deficit.
Yeah.
But we don't actually recognize the deficit when you get into that calendar year.
Yeah, I know.
So for example, and it's not on one of the sheets you have, a prior finance director showed 0% increase for state aid, 0% for town aid. And so that just made the deficit like an $8 million deficit, right? So either going to show that you're getting some money from state and local, or you're going to show you're not getting anything and your deficit goes up. The number is going to sit someplace. For 24, it showed like an $8 million deficit. We're in 24 now and we're level, like we're operating within the budget that we have.
With duct tape and gum, but
sometimes we have to do what we have to do to make it all work.
Yeah.
And so I guess the point is, in prior years, they've shown deficits, and when those years have come true and you are actually living in that year, the variables become a little bit more clearer, the assumptions are a little bit more understandable, and then we can make adjustments. This doesn't include retirements, doesn't include adjustments based on enrollment. There's a variety of different things that change, and that's what the budget process is for. This is just to kind of give the town, it's our responsibility due to, from the charter to notify the town of this is where we're starting based on what we know today. And that was in October.
all right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Moving to report of other town officers and officials. Robert Civetti, Finance Director. We have two items, October 2023 budget to actual and the budget calendar for FY 25. This is pages 67 to 97 in your packets. Mr. Civetti, I'll throw it over to you.
Good evening. So in your packet, you do have the year-to-date budget versus actual for the general fund from July 1st through October 31st. So a third of the way through the fiscal year. And then also accompanying that, I believe you have a handle that just highlighted some of the items in the budget actual. And so I'll just touch on those briefly, but obviously if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So through this period, again, we're at 33.33% through the year. When you look at the revenue, our revenue year to date is approximately 34% of the budget. So we're right on line with the revenue, at least in total. Some of the highlights or some of the items to note. The town clerk revenue is currently trending slightly higher than budgeted. However, the recording fees is about 20,000 less than anticipated. But again, so everything would have stayed even with slightly higher. Municipal court fees are trending about 80% more than budgeted. Treasurer revenues, about 400,000 more than budgeted, primarily related to the interest income we've been able to realize. Obviously, everybody knows the interest rates we're able to get from the local financial institutions are much higher than what we experienced in the past. We also moved out of the investments we had and went into government treasuries, which gave us a guaranteed interest rate rather than looking into the market fluctuations. So, you know, positive results there. On the state revenue, so Department 615, excuse me, the telephone tax is approximately 38,000 more than budgeted. Again, during the budget cycle, we went with what was posted there, but then the actual numbers, once the governor's budget's finalized and those numbers came out, it was slightly higher than what we budgeted. Hotel tax is trending a little bit higher. Meals and beverage tax are trending a little bit lower. Cannabis tax isn't something we had budgeted. To be honest with you, I didn't realize it existed. It just started this year, but we are getting some revenue there. And then state housing aid, just if you look at the budget actual, historically state housing aid, you would usually receive half of it in October, half of it in April. But because all our housing aid now comes through Rhode Island Health and Ed.
Quick question for you on the cannabis tax. How are we getting cannabis tax? Because what?
It comes directly from the state. So I don't know if it's.
All right. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't like local. Because we haven't approved any licenses to my knowledge.
But with the charter approval last year, basically by the town voting yes and opting in, that meant we were eligible to receive any state.
Any
tax.
kind of state allocation.
Yes,
Okay.
if your town
Fair.
voted no, you were excluded from getting any revenue from
Correct.
cannabis tax.
We didn't start a new tax, no.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's
You're correct.
with the charter.
Right.
Or, I'm sorry.
So I was saying on the housing aid, because our housing aid all now comes through Rhode Island Health and Ed Building Corporation, that gets allocated based on our debt service payments. So because the bulk of our debt service payments, principal and interest, is happening in March and April, that's where we're going to receive the majority of our housing aid. So we do still expect to receive exactly what was budgeted. The tax assessment assesses payment in lieu of taxes. You'll see we budgeted, I believe, 90,000. There's nothing there right now. I need to look into that. Obviously, when the budget was prepared, we kept the budget line item where it's been in previous years. I've asked a few folks in town what generally comes in for that line item, and we haven't quite figured it out yet. So
Sally sometimes is wrong.
yes, I agree. So that may be one of those cases here. It may be zero line item, but again, I think we'll make up in different areas. Tax collector, you'll see interest and penalties is trending lower. However, keep in mind that we're just at the initial start of the year. So obviously as the payments come more and more delinquent, that hopefully we'll see that interest and penalties increase. Police department revenue trending higher than anticipated. However, we expect details obviously to slow down in the winter months. Inspection and permits are trending higher. Probably about 75-80% more than budgeted. Recreation department, as I mentioned at the last meeting, that revenue's going to be less than anticipated, but we also had the the savings on the summer programs as well. So it should be direct relationship. Then on the total expenditures year to date, 36,584,000. It's about 31.4% of the annual budget. So again, we're right on line in total. Although you do have to remember that obviously our debt service payments, the bulk of the principal is due in March and April. But just highlighting some of the departments. So town manager's department, we currently have the unfilled executive assistant position that was budgeted at 33,511. So could be some savings there. Vehicle lease, I believe there's a revision to what I had provided to you. So it was an unbudgeted expense during the budget cycle. It was a belief that the vehicle leases were all budgeted in DPW, but I guess DPW budgeted for their vehicles. They did not include the one with planning and the one with the town manager and also the rec department. So we'll see some unbudgeted lines there. But the vehicle lease for the town manager should be expected to be about 8,200 per year. I think the number that you have on the handout was 12,000, but that was overstated. It should be 8,200. Human services, this is probably the biggest item just to bring clarification to, but under the human services or human resources, the SRP pension contribution. So we had budgeted that at 721,000. Over the past couple of weeks, we received some reports from the Angel Pension Group and meeting with Chris Deverna also. I'm
No,
sorry.
we've said that before, yeah.
No relation to Angel.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sorry. No relation. So we had some discussions looking at their actual evaluations, try to get clarification. And again, we're still working with the school department to try to see what we're going to do moving forward as far as those valuations. But interestingly enough, when they give their report now, like they just provided the June of 23 valuation. In that report, which came out in October, they tell us what our contribution should have been for 23. So they are a little behind. It does us no good to tell me what we should have contributed in 23 when we're already in 24. So when you look, we actually contributed in 2023. This council had budgeted 700,000. The town contributed 700,000. Now the actuary came out and said we only had to contribute 255,000. So this council, we've actually, it's a good thing you funded the pension more than you had to, but it was 450,000 more than what we were required to fund. So some of those things we're looking at. So with that in mind, I did make some adjustments. So again, based on the report that they just issued, although we budgeted this year 721,000, they're saying the actuary determined contribution, so the ADC for fiscal 2024 only has to be 525,000. So at this point, I cut back the funding, even though the council approved 721,000, because we're only required to do 525. That's what I'm going to start funding. And the reason is twofold, because on our local 94, so the municipal pension, that actually came in a little bit higher than what we had budgeted. So now I'm going to fund that actual. And on the police, same thing. The police funding was about 200 and I think I have it in there somewhere, 200 something thousand more than what we had budgeted. So I'm going to try to fully fund the police plan, fully fund the municipal plan, and again, fully fund the SRP plan, but obviously not in the amount which the council budgeted. So we're just looking at those three as a whole. But again, trying to maintain compliance with what the actuaries are recommending. Under the same thing, human services or human resources, we had some unanticipated unemployment claims. We'll continue to monitor that. Hopefully we still stay within the budget, which at this point, I think we will be. You'll see the pension, the muni, defined benefit 414, budget was 1,177,000. Again, this way I say the actually determined contribution is 1,191,000. So we're going to be over budget by 14,000. But again, we'll be utilizing the savings from the SRP contributions. Town solicitor, if we annualize at this point, it's projected to be 818,000 or 60% over budget. The treasurer, we insert a line item in there for investment advisory fees. which obviously just offsets some of the earnings we saw on the interest income and investment income. Currently, we have a finance clerk position that's been vacant since mid-September, so we should see some savings in there. That position will be filled later this month. Finance director's compensation, that all took place after 10/31. It was all finally caught up, and so that you'll see that in November's report. And then the grant consultants currently being posted to this department, and again, it was an unbudgeted item, so you'll see that in there. Tax assessor, as I mentioned before, we have the $125,000 line item. We'll be looking to submit a resolution or ordinance to get approved to set that up in a separate fund. As far as the police department, the most significant item, overtime, is currently trending significantly higher than what was anticipated due to shortage in staff and number of officers. So currently, if we trend at the same rate we're currently at, you're looking at the overtime would amount to about 1.2 million, which is 202% of the budget. So, yes.
Is that offset at all by a reduction in regular salaries or benefits?
There will be some savings there, but not to the extent that the overage.
Yeah,
And-
we didn't budget for some of the vacancies the first 6 months of the year, so that realized savings won't be as much as it was in the past.
Gotcha.
Right now we have, I think it's 3 people in military, 3 people in FMLA, it went down 7, so you're down 13 spots right now.
And are we seeing any uptick in applicants? I don't know if you would know.
So 3 are graduating December 15th, 2 are going to the academy in January, but we're gonna have 2 retirements in March. So we're just kind of treading water like every other PD in the state.
Mhm. Exactly.
So then the last item there under the police pension is what I was referring to earlier, where we budgeted for the pension 5,816,000. The actually determined contribution came in at 6,044,000. So even once we shuffle all the municipal SRP and the police pension around, we're probably going to look to have an over budget of about $46,000 in pensions related to those 3 plans. Engineering, we recently hired the engineering coordinator, so we'll see savings obviously for the first 4 months of the year. Roads and bridges. In November, if you look at some of the salaries for like the breakdown of the clerk, executive assistant, it looks like we're significantly under budget, but everybody was being posted to one salary line item. So on November 3rd, we did do a reallocation. So again, you'll see that line up on the November report. When you look at capital leases under roads and bridges, just note that the reason it's so high is we had an annual cost of $200,000 on one of the capital purchase agreements. That gets paid out in August each year. So that's a one-time payment, and then we have the regular. So we still expect to be in compliance with that line item. Under Department 880, vehicle maintenance. You'll see auto repair parts were already over budget by 9,400. Equipment repair parts, we've committed 73% of the budget at this point. And sanitation repair parts were over budget by 5,900. And if we keep on the current pace, we'll be at a total cost of 379,000 or 292% of the budget. So as everybody knows, we've had issues with the sanitation vehicles. A lot of time, I think there's more of them being off the road than on the road, at least from what I hear. So it's something hopefully we can get control of and try to monitor those costs and hopefully make up in other areas. And just a couple other notes. So the Department 951 contingency, just making a notation that year to date, you'll see the amounts in there. There's 100,000 that we put in there for the OPEB trust fund. We have signed all the paperwork. They're finalizing that. So we had budgeted 100,000 to go into that fund. So that expenditure has been recorded at this point. And then there's approximately 34,000 for the dynamic study. And then the only capital improvement at this point reflected in the budget actual is 45,000 for a new DPW grader that was purchased in July to help with all the road work and road paving projects you had going on.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Thank you very much for the very detailed report, Finance Director. Couple questions. As I'm looking through all of these numbers, especially the ones that are over budget, town solicitor, police, Department 880. I mean, we're talking, you know, 2 commas being over budget, like $2 million ish. What are we doing to offset some of these overages? Are we instituting a freeze on anything? Are we deferring any major projects? Have we given any consideration there?
Yeah, right now, I'll be honest with you, we'll looking where we're at, probably look to see where we're at through the end of November, going into December, and then for the first of the year would be sitting down with the town manager, especially as we start looking at the budget, and at that point, see if we need to implement a freeze. Right now, I think some of the, obviously the transportation, the sanitation vehicles, there's not much we can do there. He's gotta get those up and running so that we can, you know, provide the services. I know there's been discussion, looking to do, you know, things with sanitation. So depending where that goes, we could have some savings there going forward. But
Okay.
we will monitor it over the next month, and then probably for the first of the year, decide if there's gonna be a freeze needed, or are we gonna have significant revenue in other areas that can help.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Further discussion, questions, members of the council? Council Ludwig?
So the areas Councilor LeBlanc just highlighted, I have those all circled on my page too. So thank you for going through everything in detail. The 2 particular areas that really stand out to me. So we have on the solicitor budget, 68% over budget. And then police overtime, 202% of the budget. So, I mean, yeah, and these are, you know, over $1 million on the police side and almost $1 million on the solicitor side. So to me, it's a little bit less about freeze everybody to make up just those 2 areas. It feels like there's 1 or 2, maybe 3 areas that are grossly over budget that I would be interested in discussing in January. Because freeze expenses, I don't know if we need to do that for everything on every penny. I'm not sure if we need to do that. Maybe we do. I don't know. But the 2 areas that are like grossly over budget on legal services and police overtime. I mean, I would like to see if we can have a discussion on those in January.
Truthfully, I don't see an end game with the police overtime. I don't see how that can be rectified. Unless we have a influx of officers that transfer to Coventry, which we're trying to do now. We're trying to do some outreach because we do offer a very good package for someone to transfer here. We start them at top step, top vacation step. If they don't take the healthcare, they get a $10,000 bonus. So we have a very, So we have a very lucrative package for someone to transfer here.
But I think this is what we need to be making transparent to the public. We thought one thing, and then this is what's actually happening and why. So, I mean, these are, I very much appreciate the very detailed breakdown here, but I gotta be honest, I'm less concerned about $9,000 over in the vehicle maintenance department when we're 68% over and 202% over in other, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, and I think, but I think it is worth though, now that we're getting the reconciliation issue behind us and we're moving towards getting our audits in good standing. We did have this discussion at budget time in the spring with respect to the solicitor that there was extreme disbelief that it was 400K flat every year for the last 7-8 years. So I think that there may be time there to then actually look at the record there of what has actually been spent historically. So we get a better sense of where that specifically lies. But to your point, it's kind of like, what more can we do? But I do agree with Councilor Ludwig that we need to show the due diligence that we're taking a look at these to
And
address.
I think too, I mean, I can't speak for what happened in the past, but from the conversations I've had, I don't think we've done much in the past regarding some of our legacy legal issues. They kind of just sat there and didn't really, there was a change in strategy, I think. So when we change the strategy when it comes to the solicitor's office, that comes with a price tag, as opposed to doing nothing.
Yeah,
So I
there
think,
is town council accountability.
so I think that's coming to fruition now. What the decisions the council made regarding legacy issues going forward, that's what we're paying for.
Before I go to Councilor Shockley, anything more from Councilor Ludwig?
I'm not satisfied with a 2-minute conversation on
not
items that
saying-
I'm not saying anything about what everyone has just said. I'm saying personally, I'm not satisfied with a 2-minute conversation. So what I'd like to do is request that in January, if we could go over the 2 or 3 top areas and give that transparency to the public. And I think it'll help
That's fair.
us set up for
fair.
May.
Councilor Shockley was next.
Just to add to that, one other department, because I agree, the small, we're 10,000 over or under budget. Those are rounding in certain instances, but when you look at the sanitation repair and that it's on pace to be 292% over what was, I'm guessing, about $100,000 budget, and we're not buying new trucks. We're just trying to fix $300,000 to try to fix trucks that aren't going to get fixed. So as we go forward with this discussion, I think we've all said we want to talk about changes we might make as far as how this town deals with sanitation. That is an extreme overage of cost. And I think in many instances, and I think Councilor Ludwig was alluding to it, and as were you, President Lima, that we went into some of these during the budget season knowing we were going to go over budget, and having to create some sort of budget that was within the realm of possibility as far as what we could, ask for on a tax basis. But we knew we were going over on some of these items and just had no other choice but to budget for something within reach. So that's one I would like to add to that discussion, is just, are we going to keep throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars after
Good after bad.
irreparable trucks? Yeah.
So the IFB is out right now for sanitation, so that should hopefully be in front of the council the beginning of January.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Perhaps in any department that we're going over, we can just, because Councilwoman Ludwig brought up legal. Maybe we could break out the 818 by project and maybe by town council vote, because occasionally, I know in the past, we have actually approved special dollars going towards legal projects from ARPA. So it might just be helpful for us, rather than just seeing 818, 68% over budget. It just might be helpful. And then for the police department,
Well,
it
that's
might,
the projection. We're not.
I know,
giving-
but there's a projection of costs
Yeah.
associated to projects, I'm assuming.
But you're saying you want
So-
to see the breakdown to date. So obviously that wouldn't correlate with
It
projected.
kind of goes with
Could
it.
even correlate
It
to projecting.
kinda-
If we're
yeah.
projecting.
Sure.
this is gonna
Yeah.
cost
Yeah.
us this.
And then for the police department, I was just thinking here, but you're showing us overtime is over 1.2, but we do have some vacancies. Maybe we could show like what the net actual overage is, rather than just calling out the one line on overtime. That's all. Just suggestions.
Any further discussion? So sounds like we'll look to Manager Perlow, as we're managing the calendars for council agendas. Look to get a discussion on a January agenda, but obviously it'd be great if you and Director Civetti could come prepared. Maybe at some point in December, we could try and get a sense of what the council's questions and points of interest would be in terms of metrics there. Any further discussion? Director Civetti, and Manager Prillo, I'll throw it to you for the proposed budget calendar for FY 25, which is on page, I believe, or I thought it was in our packet. Yes, it is. 96 and 97.
So I kept all the categories that you guys had last year. I just put new dates in there, just trying to get the process done a little quicker. Obviously, without the reevaluation, we foresee this getting done quicker, not having to wait for those final numbers to come in and make those changes to the rates. So, like I said, none of the categories have changed. I'm just wondering, is that January 11th meeting what you were referencing, Councilwoman Ludwig, with the school? No, the workshop?
I'll do a search because I thought I remember the last couple of years we had to have a session in December
Okay.
with the school committee to review numbers, but maybe what we just did was sufficient. I'm not sure.
The state law requires, if I may, the state law requires a joint session of the school committee and the council. Oddly enough, many municipalities don't observe that. Last year when I came in, I recommended that it be done before the end of the year. I don't recall what the past practice had been. It's oftentimes, the state law is there because oftentimes school districts and municipalities just don't get together. There's been pretty constant dialogue here, but nevertheless, there's a nod to the state law. I mean, again, even last year, I mean, to the superintendent's point earlier, it's early. You know, they provided, I think this year, better information than what they provided last year at this point. But technically, it does not meet the requirement of the state law for both bodies to sit together.
So we're looking for an additional joint meeting for December.
Could it just fall within a regularly scheduled council meeting?
Okay.
Any further, Councilor Ludwig? I just wanted to make sure she was done. Vice President Mike.
So I'm actually looking at the fiscal year 2021 budget calendar on the town's website, and there was to Councilwoman Ludwig's comment. It says Monday, December 9th. It says work session between school committee, town council to discuss anticipated school department expenditures, enrollment, staff, and facility needs. And then there was also another meeting on December 13th, start of budget process with distribution of forms for both capital and operating budgets. And that was in December. So just calling it out there. She is absolutely correct.
All right, so either the 12th or the 19th then. Let's plan for that. Oh, okay, so the 19th. Yeah. So do we need a formal motion then to amend the calendar? I mean, the council's adopting it or yeah. Do I hear a motion to add Tuesday, December 19th, 2023 as the formal joint workshop with the, yeah? The 19th is our last meeting of the year.
Just defer it next year.
Yeah, just our other meeting, the 12th, is at the annex for a presentation about the fire services study. So it wouldn't make sense to bring the school committee in that night.
He can come in virtually. He can come in virtually. He doesn't have to be present. Just the bodies have to be present. The two boards.
I don't know what state you'd be in to to participate virtually. I think to the solicitor's point, obviously there's a spirit to the law and we've been communicating a lot. So, I mean, if, I don't know what the council's pleasure is, but
I don't recommend we skip over the legal requirement of the two bodies meeting.
yeah,
But as to the presence of Mr. Deverna, he's provided what he's provided. If there's something,
yeah,
I'm sure the superintendent could present it.
yeah. We have confidence in Don too. So, as a motion, do I hear a second? Or no, was there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Vice President Blank,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Shockley, discussion.
Do we take the 11th off or do we have 2 meetings?
I don't think the 11th's the same, is it? Didn't we just say that? Oh, okay, so then.
I don't
can-
need to go to 2.
Okay, so let me, I'm going to retract my motion or my request to change the date on the Thursday, January 11th item to be Tuesday, December 19th in the calendar, and then move that up ahead of January 8th.
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Vice President Blank.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion from the council?
Do we have to move the worksheets as well? Do they need to fall before? Or is
No.
they have nothing to do with it? Okay, just want to be sure.
Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Any further discussion on the budget calendar? Did the school department have a chance to look at this, make sure that the dates we're looking at for when they would know some estimates from the state on state aid matchup? Because I know in the past, we've had to make amendments midstream, but. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Moving on to council business matters carried over. This is the continuation of our license discussion from last month. We have, actually, I'm gonna do this. Manager Perillo, did you just want to kind of preface this maybe with the clerk to start and then we'll go to the solicitor?
So we've been kind of having an issue with the fire marshal regarding the inspections. This has been an ongoing process, not just this year, but also years past. I've talked to Chief Brown about it. We're trying to make it work. Right now, it's not working. So a majority of these licenses do not have the fire inspection from the marshal. Yesterday, that number was 44, did not have it. Today, we're down
This
to,
is the you guys should all have a packet on your desk.
yeah, so today we're down to 30. So it's a work in progress. I've been speaking to him, we've been speaking to the clerk as to how we can possibly remedy this. Anywhere from giving them the licenses that need to be done in July as opposed to August. Possibly bringing in some additional manpower. We're kind of running the gambit with ideas, but as of right now, they are not fully complete. So I believe the solicitor has some advice as to how he would like to handle that going forward. But it's definitely a concern for us as a town when it comes to liability for these businesses being open without the fire inspection.
Solicitor Angel, I don't know if you want to preface these before we dive in.
Sure. So my recommendation was, after reviewing this list of what's outstanding, is to go class by class. Of particular concern, obviously, is any establishment, and let's just save for a minute the discussion of who has and has not had a fire inspection, okay? Because Coventry's in the unique circumstance of really having no control over a fire inspection because we don't have a fire department. We have fire districts. But yet the town accrues the legal liability and the responsibility for compliance as to the issuance of licenses. Yet a pretty key component part of that process is something beyond the town's control. So with respect to anyone who has an outstanding issue, any establishment with an outstanding issue as to fire inspection only, my recommendation would be, as to those, and to go by class as to what's outstanding, fire inspection only, is that the council continue its provisional approval to the meeting of December 19th. However, in the interim, to direct the town manager to put the respective fire departments on notice. I don't know if it's all one district or another that has this inspection issue. That this is a pretty serious issue, and certainly the wording can be left up to him. In the meantime, the town manager can send the building inspector and the electrical inspector to each of these establishments for the purpose of making sure that the fire devices are operational, that they're keyed into the central station, the appropriate central station, and that the building layout has not changed or been altered since they were granted a license, in so much as, have exits been eliminated? Are there doors that are missing crash bars? Okay, those kinds of things. Those are pretty obvious. So that the town can document that it's doing all that it can to ensure, as best it can, that the physical plant is operational with respect to having people on the premises. That's a serious issue with respect to anyone who needs a fire inspection. With respect to folks that are serving food, if it's fire inspection only, and that's generally what I see from this list, then what I said applies. For folks that are serving liquor who have issues other than the fact that, for want of a fire inspection, there's one on the list, for example, that's missing good standing with the Division of Taxation, payment of taxes, and so forth. There's another one that's missing a Board of Health inspection, but they haven't opened yet. So you should continue to hold that one. For those who don't have a certificate of insurance, in addition to fire inspection, for those that don't have a GS from taxation, in addition to fire inspection or sans fire inspection, my advice is to send a cease and desist to those establishments that they may not serve alcohol until they remedy those non-fire inspection issues. They may, however, continue to serve food only. You're permitted to do that, and have them visit with you again on the 19th of December. In the meantime, that cease and desist should be served by the police department immediately, in that they should be advised in the writing. I'll be happy to work with the clerk on this and the manager, or it can come from my office, that all licenses are at risk for their failure to comply. And that's my recommendation. And that, obviously they're subject to the electrical and building inspection, but it's a cease and desist on liquor for failure to comply that usually gets people's attention. And we don't have many of those on this list, frankly. So
Questions for the solicitor? Counselor Ludwig?
So Solicitor Angel, with that suggestion, just so I understand, if we don't renew and we send a cease and desist, desist. I knew that. The business would, in essence, they'd have to stop selling alcohol the day they receive that notice. And when is our next meeting? The 11th? 19th?
There would be a certain number day provisional extension to the 19th. Or the meeting, we would take those up again.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
So we would extend technically these licenses expire on December 1st. Those that just need fire only, we would do a provisional extension to December 19th and direct the clerk's office and the manager to send letters to the fire districts that have those businesses waiting on marshal services, basically saying, hello, these businesses are at risk. We need you to render service. That's essentially what we're looking at. But for those, like the solicitor said, that have a lot of other items, serious ones, those are the ones that would receive the cease and desist as it pertains to alcohol. Did I get that?
yeah, it would be cease and desist as to alcohol. They can serve food only, and failure to comply would essentially put all of their licenses at risk. You would then be able to put them in a revocation status. You would show cause the license holder for failure to comply with the renewal requirements. Failure to pay the State Division of Taxation can be symptomatic of other issues. So I don't want to speculate on that and single anybody out, but they have to comply. It's just that simple. I mean, this list is shrunk in size just from last week. And as I look, unless I read this wrong, what's in front of you, there really is two. There are only two. There are only two. So, a certificate of insurance, that's a phone call and a PDF. Good standing with the Division of Taxation, that's going to take some time to resolve. But my understanding, there's been no dialogue in that business whatsoever with us. And
If we do something like with the insurance one, I guess this is where I'm having trouble. I don't want to shut somebody's business down for 3 weeks right before Christmas with alcohol sales. If it's just, they just have to get the insurance certificate. So is there any way?
Liquor is served, and this council knows that. And there's a death on the road as a result of somebody being overserved with lack of insurance. This town can expect to sue.
Of course, I don't want us to get sued. But I just don't want us to throw the sledgehammer down and then not allow this person to come back in for 3 weeks.
But at what point do we expect some accountability when the clerk's office has reached out multiple times, telling them what is left on the checklist?
Well, yeah,
knowing
so
when the
I'm not
deadline
saying
is?
not approve it, but maybe there's some middle ground that we can reach to say, we'd be willing to have 3 of us come in if you can get this figured out in the next,
But there's still
10
liability.
days. No.
Along those lines of like you're saying though, can the council pass something where if they do comply, the clerk can issue prior to the 19th?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
mean?
is there some sort of middle ground that if they get those things and they do it in the next couple days, that they actually can open again, in essence, for the alcohol sales and not have to wait until the 19th?
They kind of would fall into the same category as everyone else who's just missed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't have any problem with that. That would make sense.
Okay, because I think that would at least show that we're,
But the cease and desist-
yeah, no, I'm not saying not issue that. I'm saying go ahead and issue that. But if it really is this simple and somebody's just, you know, in the hospital or something and like just couldn't get it done, I don't know.
I can tell you that there was a liquor store on this list that was missing a certificate of insurance. And I happen to know the lawyer that represents the family that owns a bunch of these liquor stores. And I called him and I said, huh? He said, that can't be right. Call me back. He said, oversight, it's on the way. As to the one business where there are tax issues, that doesn't get resolved in a couple of weeks.
Probably not that one, but
It doesn't, and that's the only one. So, I mean, that's the one that really honestly concerns me more than I am concerned about the certificate of insurance, because I agree with you. You get it done and life goes on, but
So I think at this point, I'd like us to start tackling the list and we'll start addressing them that way. I hear the point, I hear the sentiment, and it sounds like we can achieve some middle ground there, but I
Yeah.
just, for the sake of just moving things along,
sure.
want to start tackling the list. So we have a section in our packet from 99 to pages 120, from the clerk in our packet. However, as you heard, there was an update. 14, I think, got fire inspections complete since the packet was posted. Yeah, so we're down from the 40 to 30, 44, 30. No, that doesn't equal 13. 44 to 30. That's 14. So we'll take up the first one, A, update annual renewal of Class A liquor licenses, liquor stores. We have Crestwood Wine and Spirits Incorporated, 725 Tyoke Ave, Bill's Liquor, and Coventry Liquors. So we just heard, and this goes by, Joanne, if I'm reading it right in the packet, it's vertical, but it's reading long ways, right?
they've been moved to. It's maybe.
Yeah, so of the three, Bill's Liquor, Coventry Liquors, and Crestwood Wine and Spirits, what's outstanding at this point? Just fire. Can you confirm that?
What's the question?
Of the three Class A's, Bill's Liquor, Crestwood, and Coventry Liquors, what's outstanding of those three at this?
Just
point?
fire.
Just fire.
Mhm.
So I guess then I would ask for provisional approval of the licenses to December 19th and hold them until fire inspection is recorded.
And if I may, Madam President, just to cover the town a bit on liability, if we can send the electrical and building inspectors out there over the next couple of weeks to report back to the council, let's assume, for example, by December 19th, if a fire inspection is not done, it's at least warm comfort to the town from a risk compliance standpoint that electrical and building have no problem with the premises.
All right, I'm gonna withdraw that motion and I'll retool it. Vice President LeBlanc.
I just need help understanding one thing. So for Crestwood Wine and Spirits, in the fire inspection number column, there is an LS-23-52. So does that mean that they actually had a fire inspection? I'm just confused.
I believe those are numbers that were in that are just in the system. They didn't have one for this year.
Because in the packet,
Got it.
they don't have fire inspection. The packet filed on.
Right, but this is supposed to be the most.
No, I'm saying, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
okay, so with that being said, I then seek a motion to provisionally approve the Class A licenses for Bill's Liquor, Coventry Liquors, Crestwood Wine and Spirits Incorporated, to December 19th and instruct the manager and clerk's office to send the electrical and building official to conduct an assessment in the meantime.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President
I'll
LeBlanc,
second it.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion. Did I do that right, Mr. Solicitor? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
I,
With all of these, if this inspection is completed and submitted to the clerk, we can issue the license.
You can't, because the law requires a full fire inspection by a duly.
Oh, that's what I
appointed
mean. So
fire
say the marshal goes to these 3 places tomorrow.
Mhm.
Can we issue that license?
Yes.
Okay.
all right. Item B, update annual renewal of Class B liquor license at restaurants with full bar. Starts on page 102 of our packets. Not sure if this corresponds directly with. I don't think it corresponds directly with what's. Can you help me on this one, Madam Clerk?
Sure. So each of you should have gotten an updated packet.
Yeah, which page corresponds with the Class B liquor licenses from this new packet?
It's on the first page, the very first page.
Oh, so it's mixed in with the Class A's.
Yes, it
Oh,
wasn't-
okay, I
yep.
see. So Class B missing fire inspection are Applebee's, Dragon Palace of Coventry, Flat River Tavern, JW's Pub Incorporated, Old Theater Diner, Pat's Italian Restaurant, Seven Moons Coventry, and Brazza. Well, no, I'm sorry, Brazza's a separate one.
That's the Class B with restaurants and full bar as opposed to the Class B restaurants with beer and wine only.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna request the same motion as the previous item.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Item C, update annual renewal Class B limited liquor licenses, restaurants.
If
with
I
beer
may,
and wine
Madam
only.
President, you
Yes.
did not address, the council did not address the issue of what to do with those B license
Oh,
holders
Yep,
who have issues other than a lack of fire inspection.
right.
And those are listed as the first 3 items on your update on page 1.
Right, okay.
The motion was fine.
No. We
You
need
need-
to do a new motion.
you
for
need to
these
do
3.
something about
Still
the cease and
within,
desist.
still within B
Yep.
liquor licenses. So Filippo's Twisted Pizzeria Coventry, they're missing fire inspection and certificate of insurance. So this goes back to Council Ludwig's point. What's considered like a healthy grace period then with a provisional?
I would use the same date of 12/19. You issue, you vote to issue a cease and desist on the service of liquor forthwith. Indicate that they can continue to serve food only. However, that failure to adhere to the compliance requirements of the license renewal places all their licenses at risk. And obviously, they'll be subject to the same electrical and building inspection. So
That doesn't sound like it gives what you were looking for though.
So, yeah, so can I just make a suggestion here, see if this might work? So for Twisted and for Lake Taco, can we make a similar motion? But say, if they're able to get the fire inspection, certificate of insurance and or Board of Health item we can then release the license.
Maybe I wasn't clear. I don't want to conflate the concept of their compliance with the clerk's office. I mean, if any one of these people show up tomorrow and say, hey, here's all my stuff, then the cease and desist is listed. They don't have to wait, lifted. They don't have to wait until the 19th.
Okay, so okay. In
Right.
general?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought
My
we had
apologies, that
actually.
wasn't clear.
Okay. So, so do we have to vote no on these then? Because if we're
No.
not making a motion at
No,
all.
it's still the provision, it's still the issuing a cease and desist. But provisional, no, I'm still confused.
In these cases, you are provisionally approving the victualling part of their license, which is
Just
the
the
part
food
of the
only.
license that says you can serve food and whatever else they may do at these establishments. However, you are ordering them to cease and desist on the service of liquor until they meet all renewal requirements. And that failure to meet all of those renewal requirements by the 19th may subject all of their licenses to revocation for failure to comply.
But this is just their class B, so
It's a BV.
yeah.
It's really not listed correctly here. It's a BV. The state liquor code calls for BV, which the B is the type of liquor and the V is victualling. So it's the service of alcohol. It's properly listed in words on the agenda, which is restaurant, full bar. The victualling part is the restaurant and the full bar is the liquor.
Okay, I'm gonna try and stumble through this. So for Filippo's Twisted Pizzeria of Coventry, Harris Bar and Grill, and Lake Taco, the motion we're seeking is to approve provisional issuance of the license to December 19th as it relates to
Victualling.
the victualling piece of the license, and ordering an issuance of a cease and desist on the Class B liquor, but the liquor portion of the license until compliance is met on the full checklist with the clerk.
That's correct.
So I hear a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
All right, did I get everybody on B? Bratza's next on the agenda. But did I miss any other B? Okay. Yep, just want to make sure. Okay, so now moving on to C, update annual renewal Class B limited liquor licenses, restaurants with beer and wine only. We have Bratza. And this is one just missing the fire inspection, so I'll be seeking what? Yes, same as the motion used in item A.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by
I'll second it.
Blank, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Item D, update annual renewal of Class C liquor licenses with additional hours, retail full bar. Is the update that everything's all set?
Everything's all set with that one.
Okay. Wait, but I see. Okay, so, okay, all right. Item E, update annual renewal of Class D liquor licenses, Bless You Club with full bar. Page 111.
That one's all set as well.
That's all set? Okay,
The only ones without standing.
okay, got it. Update annual renewal of victualling licenses, 114. this page 2 here. And these are all, it looks like these are all based on the update, fire inspection only. So I'll seek the same motion as item A for this one.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passed.
Item G, update annual renewal of additional hours. But it looks like this one's been taken care of. Time for the snack, so all set. Item H, update licenses that have been issued. Well, it's just a general update. We have that in our packet, or the one that was given to us. Okay, so Madam Clerk, Manager Perlow, we're clear on or we voted on, yes, our motion did include you sending letter to the fire districts for each of those. Okay, all right, we're covered then. Any further discussion on these from members of the council? No, they were just update. It was moved to update. Yep. Yep. Moving on to public comment for undocketed items. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a public comment on an undocketed item? Any members of the public on Zoom, public comment on undocketed items? Raise your hand to be let in. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment is now closed. Moving on to introduction of new matters before the council. Item A, town council calendar for regularly scheduled meeting dates and times for 2024 to be set. This is on page 121 in our packets. Obviously these would now, this schedule would now include things like from the budget calendar, March 18th, March 19th, April 30th, May 4th, May 7th. April 9th is now also provisional budget adoption date, tentatively at this point. Do I hear a motion to ratify the town council meeting schedule?
I'll make the motion.
Adopt, shall I say?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion, Vice President Blank.
I just want to call it July 25th on here, but that's a Thursday. Is that intentional?
Oh, that might have just been a copy paste from June 25th.
I think so. I think it's supposed to be the 23rd. Just calling it out.
I'll verify. Yep, that's correct. Change that to 23rd. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Any further discussion? Councilmember Shockley?
Just if anyone's watching the meeting or chooses to at a later date, keep in mind that some of these meetings on this calendar are after an election. So please think about running for public office in all districts and in our 2 at-large positions.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Item B, approval of Narragansett / Verizon to be granted permission to locate and maintain poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustain and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by you petitioner along and across the following public ways. A, Reservoir Road, installing 35-3 pole 36-84, 24-foot southwest pole from pole 36. Installing anchor guy on P36-84 with 5-foot lead southwest. Manager Perlow, any comments?
I spoke to Director McGee and he had no concerns with either one of these 2 locations. I also did speak to Rail and Energy. Well, I had an email conversation, if you want to say. They were concerned about when the London Turnpike was going to be approved, and I told them of the issues we've had lately with these poles and would like it if a representative could come to the council meeting. Obviously, that did not happen, but I made them aware of the issues we're having with their drawings and the non-specificity of their locations. So they said they're going to try to address it.
Discussion from the council. I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the location requests.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilor Shockley. Discussion. Councilor Ludwig.
So neither of these two are in my district. So I wanted to see if you might want to speak first. If not, then I'll go ahead.
You can go. I didn't get a chance to drive by this on Reservoir Road, but it does seem pretty far down. I don't know if you had a chance.
So this is at the general vicinity is the 116 Reservoir Road. There's a tree guy. It's almost like a big stump that the pole across the street goes into. So I guess it's a pretty small front yard. So the only thing I don't understand on this drawing, and I don't know, Manager Perillo, if Director McGee mentioned this, it says they want to install the new pole, which it looks like at the 116, and an anchor guy with a lead southwest, but there's already a tree guy in that person's yard. So again, it's like, I don't understand what they're trying to do, because this drawing's not to scale. They give a pole location of 116 in the pole numbers, but that's not the 3684 is a proposed location. They don't list the tree guy on here. It's a really tiny front yard. So if it was big acreage, it would probably be less of a problem. So I'll leave it for you. This is your district, but this is like the same problem we've been having. There's no specificity. So it's up to you.
No, I mean, I really do think if you've been trying to work with them and they're reaching out to you in a rush, but they're providing no information, then until they come, yeah.
So we can keep the motion out there that was made and people can do what they wish. Right. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
No.
Councilmember Shockley,
No.
Vice President LeBlanc,
No.
President Lima.
No.
That's 4 in the negative. Motion does not pass.
Item C, approval of Narragansett / Verizon to be granted permission to locate and maintain poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustain and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by you petitioner along and across the following public ways: New London Turnpike, RIE, to install 100-foot plus give or take 3 PH primary from proposed pole 9190 to 50 to pad 9190 to 50. On page 124 to 125 in our packets. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve just to start discussion.
Motion by Vice President Blank,
I'll second.
second by Councilor Shockley. I'm pretty sure this is in my district and it's in a fairly industrialized area. So I personally don't have concerns, but I don't know if you saw any, Councilor Ludwig. Yes, Councilor Ludwig.
Yeah, so I agree with you. This is, businesses all along here. There's clearly defined pole like this. It's directly on this location. It lists 55 feet northeast. I mean, it's clear, you can tell where this is. The only one question that I had, I thought that, isn't there a new business going in right here? Aren't they redoing this to do the new suds? Not suds.
The car wash.
Car wash. So my only hesitation would be.
So I know what you're talking about. I'm 90% sure that there's like a landscaping build out there of curbing. So
Okay.
it's not like the car. Yeah.
That's the only thing that I was thinking of, because obviously this could have been put together a month or two ago, and I've seen all the new, everything new go up. So I just wouldn't want them to put a pole right in the middle of their parking lot.
I think there's like an island for curbing there at the front. So I'm 90% sure. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Moving on to executive session or closed items. I've been told that this isn't something that's incredibly urgent and we can move it to the 12th. There's nothing that needs to absolutely be reported on tonight. So do I need to vote for that? No. Okay.
I'll motion that we move it to the 12th.
All right, motion to continue
Everything else.
the item to the 12th.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passed.
At this time, I'll seek a motion to adjourn at 9:26 PM.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilmember Shockley. All those in favor say aye. The chair votes aye. We stand adjourned.